J.P. Morgan, Big Bank by Deja, Justin, Jessica, Stephen, and Gabriella. So, who is he? Well, John Pierpont Morgan, aka J.P. Morgan, was one of the most powerful bankers of his time and was a great asset to America's Industrial Revolutionary period. He financed railroads and helped organize U.S. Steel, General Electric, and other major corporations. Basically, he had his hands, or his money, and a little bit of everything. He was everybody's boss. After following in his father's footsteps, Morgan would enter the world of banking and finances, using his influences, money, to basically bail the government out and literally save the country, multiple times. He left a very strong legacy behind him, yet people still often criticize him for having too much power and manipulating the nation's financial system for his own gain because, haters gonna hate. So, his early life. J.P. Morgan was born on April 17, 1837, and would grow to be one of the richest men of his generation. His education varied as his father switched him in and out of schools often. He was accepted into the English High School of Boston, a school specializing in mathematics to prepare young men for careers in business. After graduating, he went to college in Europe, where he learned French and German and studied business. He avoided participating in the Civil War by paying $300 in his place. He then ended up buying muskets off of the army for $3.50 apiece, then resold them to a field general for about $22 apiece. How it all started. Morgan went into banking in 1857. He worked in London in a bank called Peabody Morgan and Company, a partnership between his father and George Peabody. From 1860 to 1864, Morgan acted as an agent for his father's firm in New York, J.S. Morgan and Company, which was renamed after Mr. Peabody retired in 1864. In 1871, Morgan partnered up with Anthony Drexel to form Drexel Morgan and Company. Reaching success. In 1895, after the death of Anthony Drexel, the firm was renamed to J.P. Morgan and Company. It remained in close ties with other companies such as Drexel and Company located in Philadelphia and Morgan Hargis and Company in Paris. By 1900, it was one of the most powerful banks in the world. Morgan had partners over the years such as George W. Perkins. His reputation as a banker attracted many investors to companies he took over through a process called Morganization. This was a technique that convinced European bankers to invest in industries in the U.S., which he was able to take over and stabilize through monopolization. Morganization, more like monopolization. How he helped. Morgan helped the railroad industry prosper and grow. He was heavily involved in reorganizing and helping out a number of financially troubled railroads. As a result, he gained control of 1/6 of America's rail lines. In 1895, the Federal Treasury ran out of gold. Morgan assisted in rescuing America's gold standard, loaning the government more than $60 million. In the financial panic of 1907, Morgan held a meeting with some of the country's top financiers and convinced them to bail out in order to stabilize the market. Investments. The railroads, the United States Steel, and the New York Times are just a few corporations that J.P. Morgan invested in. You can say that these corporations were successful. The railroads sparked many innovations that soon established many industries. For example, the meatpacking industry. The United States Steel, which became the largest industry ever launched, and the New York Times, which has won 117 Pulitzer Prizes, more than any other news organization. So you can say Morgan made a good investment in many corporations of the United States. Criticisms. Although Morgan has made many riveting achievements, critics opposed his financial decisions, his hobby of collecting expensive jewels and arts, and accused him of profiting from the government. He actually underwent congressional investigation because people felt that he had too much power and was capable of manipulating the U.S. financial system for his own benefit. Conclusion. In Morgan's lifetime, he made a lot of money, but died only with $80 million, according to Andrew Carnegie, Rich People Problems. He lived spending his money on for his goods, such as his vast art collection, as well as helping out the government out of his own pocket. Some were against him when they realized how much he did. However, he did not change his spending habit or his money-making ways. In the end, despite the naysayers, JP Morgan is still around today in the world after all this time. You know that bank with the little blue symbol, Chase Bank? Those are his, and they're everywhere. There's JP Mutual Funds, JP Morgan Asset Management Holdings Incorporated, and JP Morgan Securities, just to name a few. Not to mention the things we use like every day that he put his cash into. Railroads, we need those, right? Steel, which was needed to make railroads, and more. How can we hate the guy and call him a robber baron if we're still going to use his stuff, guys? Let's be fair. He did more good than harm, and therefore he was not just a, but the captain of industry in the Gilded Age.